Sofia Reyes thought she had secured her place beside Sheikh Khalid Al-Nuaimi, until a DNA test at the Royal Hospital proved the child she carried wasn't his, giving her just 48 hours to vanish before the palace closed in. Sheikh Khalid Al-Nuaimi built his reputation on precision and control. As the head of a powerful investment group in Abu Dhabi, his decisions shaped energy markets, luxury developments, and private healthcare initiatives across the Gulf. His image was carefully maintained, measured speeches, strategic philanthropy, and a disciplined personal life. When he married Sofia Reyes, a Filipina nurse who worked at a charity medical outreach program funded by his foundation, the union attracted attention but little criticism. Sofia was soft-spoken, educated, and known among colleagues for her professionalism. The marriage was seen as unconventional yet respectable. Sofia's transition into royal life was quiet. She did not seek media attention and rarely appeared alone at public events. At formal gatherings, she stood slightly behind Khalid, dressed elegantly but modestly. Palace staff described her as polite and observant. She spent much of her time supporting hospital initiatives tied to Khalid's medical foundation, visiting patients and overseeing small community programs. Her background in nursing added authenticity to her public role. 2 years into the marriage, the announcement of her pregnancy was handled with careful celebration. For Khalid, the child symbolized stability and continuation. He had no sons from previous relationships, and the birth of an heir would secure both family legacy and public perception. Preparations began months in advance. A private wing at the Royal Hospital in Abu Dhabi was reserved exclusively for Sofia's prenatal care. The hospital, known for its strict confidentiality and advanced technology, frequently served members of influential families. As part of routine prenatal screening, doctors recommended expanded genetic testing. Because of Khalid's family history of certain hereditary conditions, specialists advised a comprehensive DNA compatibility panel. The procedure was presented as precautionary and standard for high-profile patients. Khalid approved immediately, confident that the results would simply confirm everything was in order. Sofia attended appointments without hesitation. She followed medical advice closely and appeared calm during examinations. Staff noted nothing unusual in her behavior. She asked detailed questions about nutrition and infant care, showing interest typical of an expectant mother. The first sign of trouble emerged quietly inside the hospital's genetic laboratory. A senior technician reviewing the compatibility panel noticed irregular markers in the paternity indicators. The data suggested a mismatch between Khalid's genetic sample and the fetus. Assuming contamination or processing error, the lab halted final reporting and initiated a repeat analysis using fresh samples. The second test produced identical results. The probability of Khalid being the biological father was statistically insignificant. The lab director immediately escalated the findings to the hospital's executive board, bound by confidentiality agreements tied to royal clients. Within hours, a sealed report was delivered to Khalid through a trusted medical liaison. He reviewed the document in private, scanning the scientific terminology that left little room for interpretation. His controlled demeanor did not break, but those close to him sensed a shift. Instructions were issued quietly to security and legal advisors. Inside the palace, routines continued as usual. Sofia remained unaware that a routine medical screening had triggered a silent investigation that would soon challenge her marriage, her safety, and the powerful man she had married. After reviewing the sealed medical report, Sheikh Khalid did not react publicly. Instead, he activated the same strategy he used in high-stakes business disputes: gather information before making any move. Only 3 trusted advisors were informed about the DNA results. The Royal Hospital staff involved in the testing were bound by strict confidentiality orders, and additional security protocols were placed around all digital medical records. The situation had to remain contained. Khalid ordered a discreet internal review of Sofia's activities over the past year. The Palace Security Division began analyzing surveillance archives, access logs, and travel documentation. Every visitor to the residence was cross-checked. Staff schedules were examined for irregularities. Sofia's daily routine was mapped in detail, from hospital charity visits to private shopping trips. the investigation uncovered small but significant details. 6 months earlier, Sofia had traveled to Dubai alone, officially to attend a medical conference sponsored by a pharmaceutical company. The trip lasted 3 days. Palace travel coordinators confirmed the booking, and there was nothing unusual about her attending such events. However, when investigators requested hotel records, they discovered she had not stayed at the conference venue. Instead, she checked into a private luxury hotel across the city. Surveillance footage from the hotel lobby showed Sofia entering with a single suitcase and later meeting a man whose identity was initially unclear. The footage captured them sharing a quiet conversation in a corner lounge before heading toward the elevators. There were no obvious signs of secrecy, but the meeting had not been disclosed to palace staff. Facial recognition specialists were tasked with identifying the man. While that process continued, digital forensic experts examined Sofia's personal devices. On the surface, her phone contained typical applications and messages related to family and hospital work. But a deeper scan revealed encrypted communication software, hidden within a disguised utility app. The data inside required specialized decryption tools. At the same time, financial analysts reviewed recent transactions linked to Sofia's accounts. A transfer of substantial funds had been made shortly after her Dubai trip. The money moved from a joint discretionary account into a private offshore account registered under a relative's name in Manila. The transfer was legal but unusual in size compared to her previous spending patterns. Khalid's advisors began to consider broader possibilities. The pregnancy discrepancy alone suggested infidelity, but the encrypted communications and financial movement hinted at something more calculated. They questioned whether Sofia's actions were part of a personal relationship or a structured plan involving outside interests. The Royal Hospital conducted a third DNA confirmation using independent laboratory verification. The outcome removed all remaining doubt. Khalid was not the biological father of the unborn child. Security presence around Sofia shifted subtly. Her usual driver was replaced with a different one trained in observation. Invitations to external events were quietly cancelled. Staff rotation schedules were adjusted to include trusted personnel only. Her passport was temporarily requested under the explanation of routine administrative review connected to upcoming travel planning. Within days, the facial recognition team identified the man from the Dubai hotel. His name was Daniel Cortez, a former financial analyst once linked to a rival investment group competing directly with Khalid's energy projects. The connection transformed suspicion into alarm. What began as a personal betrayal now carried the potential of corporate espionage. And Sofia, still unaware of the full extent of the discovery, was moving through palace corridors under watchful eyes. Once Daniel Cortez was identified, the investigation shifted from quiet suspicion to strategic containment. Daniel's background revealed a troubling pattern. He had worked as a senior analyst for a European investment firm that lost a major energy contract to Sheikh Khalid's company 3 years earlier. Shortly after that loss, Daniel was implicated in an insider trading inquiry. Though never formally convicted, his professional reputation collapsed, and he disappeared from public corporate records soon after. Security analysts reconstructed Daniel's movements over the past year. Travel data showed repeated trips between Istanbul, Dubai, and Manila. One of those trips overlapped exactly with Sofia's medical conference in Dubai. Hotel surveillance confirmed their meeting. Further footage revealed them leaving the building separately but within minutes of each other, suggesting deliberate caution. Digital forensic teams finally decrypted fragments of Sofia's hidden messaging application. The content was partially erased, but metadata exposed timestamps and file transfers. Several encrypted attachments had been exchanged during the months leading up to her pregnancy. The file names were coded, but when cross-referenced with internal corporate systems, investigators discovered that similar timestamps matched access to Khalid's private investment archives. Attention turned to Sofia's personal study inside the palace. Forensic IT specialists examined her desktop computer, which had limited access to certain financial documents due to her involvement in charitable foundation oversight. Logs revealed that high-level project files, normally viewed only by senior executives, had been opened using her credentials. The access occurred late at night on multiple occasions, often followed by encrypted data transmissions from her phone. The pattern was alarming. Although there was no evidence that massive data theft had occurred, small segments of confidential material appeared to have been exported. The information included feasibility studies for an upcoming offshore drilling expansion and early-stage negotiations for a renewable energy partnership in North Africa. Both projects were highly sensitive and worth billions. Khalid's advisors concluded that the DNA result might have accelerated exposure of a larger operation. If Sofia's relationship with Daniel was genuine, it still overlapped suspiciously with potential corporate infiltration. If it was strategic, the pregnancy could have been either accidental or deliberately timed to create leverage within the marriage. International contacts were activated quietly. Through private security channels, Daniel was tracked to Istanbul, where he had recently opened a shell consulting firm registered under a false corporate umbrella. Financial records linked his new firm to investors connected with Khalid's former competitors. The structure suggested preparation for a long-term competitive strategy. Back in Abu Dhabi, Sofia attended routine prenatal appointments unaware that every digital move she made was being mirrored by investigators. The Royal Hospital scheduled additional examinations under the pretext of monitoring fetal health. Behind the scenes, Khalid's legal team prepared contingency plans ranging from quiet settlement to criminal prosecution. The DNA test had ignited a chain reaction that reached beyond personal betrayal. What began as a question of paternity was now entangled with corporate rivalry, encrypted communication, and possible financial sabotage. Each new discovery tightened the circle around Sofia, reducing her margin for maneuver. And while the palace remained outwardly calm, the evidence gathering had reached a stage where confrontation was inevitable. The summons to the Royal Hospital appeared routine, framed as a precautionary follow-up due to minor fluctuations in Sofia's latest prenatal scan. She arrived escorted by palace security, as had become customary in recent weeks. The private maternity wing was unusually quiet that afternoon. Senior administrators waited in a restricted conference room rather than the standard examination suite. Instead of another ultrasound, Sofia was guided into a formal meeting with the hospital's chief geneticist and a legal representative connected to Khalid's advisory team. The atmosphere was controlled and clinical. She was informed that multiple DNA analyses had confirmed a paternity discrepancy. The language was precise, supported by charts and statistical probabilities that left no ambiguity. The findings were not presented as suspicion but as verified medical fact. Sofia's composure shifted only slightly. Observers noted a pause, a steady breath, then measured stillness. She was notified that the matter had broader implications due to potential corporate security concerns linked to ongoing investigations. Though not accused formally, she was told that further clarification would be required within 48 hours before legal action or public disclosure proceeded. The time frame was deliberate, long enough to respond, short enough to prevent strategic delay. Simultaneously, administrative measures were implemented. Her primary passport was placed under temporary review for documentation verification. Palace access privileges were restricted to specific areas. Digital access credentials were suspended pending internal audit. Security presence around her residence wing increased discreetly but visibly. Unbeknownst to Khalid's advisors, Sofia had anticipated a potential discovery point. Months earlier, she had arranged contingency safeguards through networks established prior to her marriage. A second valid passport under her maiden name existed through dual citizenship channels, stored securely outside palace grounds. Cryptocurrency reserves had been accumulated gradually in digital wallets protected by layered authentication. Emergency contacts were prepared to activate transportation without direct links to her identity. That evening, the palace hosted a diplomatic reception attended by foreign delegates and media representatives. Security teams focused heavily on the event's perimeter and guest screening, stretching surveillance resources thin across multiple checkpoints. Sofia remained inside her residential wing, outwardly compliant with temporary restrictions. Shortly after midnight, she initiated her exit sequence. Using a service corridor connecting the private quarters to maintenance access routes, she avoided main surveillance nodes. Weeks earlier, she had observed routine blind spots during minor renovations, memorizing camera rotation intervals and staff patrol timing. A plane vehicle awaited beyond a secondary gate typically reserved for supply deliveries. The driver, contracted through layered intermediaries, had no direct awareness of her identity beyond coded instructions. By dawn, she had crossed into Oman via land routes, bypassing international departure terminals entirely. Within hours, she transferred to a privately chartered aircraft registered under a shell corporation tied loosely to Daniel's former associates. The aircraft's flight plan listed a commercial stop in Eastern Europe, but intelligence later suggested multiple reroutes mid-air to obscure final destination tracking. When Palace security conducted a scheduled check shortly after sunrise, her quarters were empty. Surveillance logs revealed minor disruptions but no immediate alarms. By the time authorities confirmed her departure, she was beyond regional jurisdictional reach. The 48-hour window had closed before it fully opened, leaving Khalid with evidence, unanswered questions, and a rapidly expanding international pursuit. By the time Sheikh Khalid's security teams confirmed Sofia's escape, the private airspace records had already grown complicated. The chartered aircraft that left Oman filed a destination in Eastern Europe, but mid-flight adjustments redirected it twice under aviation regulations that allowed route modifications for weather and operational reasons. Tracking signals briefly disappeared over international waters before reappearing near the Balkans. After landing, passenger documentation listed a different surname than Sofia Reyes. Khalid activated high-level contacts across multiple jurisdictions. Private intelligence contractors were deployed alongside official diplomatic requests. However, Sofia's departure had been carefully layered. The shell company that arranged the charter dissolved within 48 hours. Cryptocurrency transfers were traced to digital wallets routed through privacy-focused exchanges that resisted disclosure without court orders. By the time legal paperwork began circulating, the financial trail had fragmented beyond immediate reach. Meanwhile, the palace worked to contain reputational damage. Public statements framed Sofia's exit as a personal matter requiring privacy. No reference was made to the DNA test. Internally, forensic teams continued examining the limited data extracted from corporate servers. They concluded that while Sofia had accessed sensitive investment projections, the downloads appeared incomplete. There was no evidence of full-scale data transfer, suggesting either interruption or strategic sampling rather than total theft. International authorities eventually located Daniel Cortez in southern Spain under an unrelated financial investigation tied to securities fraud. His detention provided an opportunity for questioning. Digital devices seized during his arrest contained encrypted partitions, some partially damaged by remote wipe attempts. Forensic recovery specialists extracted fragments of correspondence referencing Phase 2 and Contingency Exit. However, Sofia's location was not clearly documented in accessible files. Speculation grew that the pregnancy may have been part of a broader leverage strategy. Some investigators believe Daniel's involvement centered on corporate advantage, while others argued that personal motives had evolved into opportunistic exploitation. The absence of clear proof left multiple interpretations open. Months later, reports surfaced through unofficial intelligence channels that Sofia had delivered the child in a private clinic outside Southeast Asia. No confirmed medical records were publicly verified. The child's paternity remained legally ambiguous despite the royal hospital's findings. Without Sofia present in jurisdiction, formal proceedings stalled. For Khalid, the incident reshaped internal security doctrine within his enterprises. Access protocols tightened. Digital monitoring systems were upgraded. Personal vetting procedures for close associates became significantly more rigorous. The marriage was quietly dissolved through sealed legal filings. Despite extensive pursuit, Sofia's confirmed whereabouts were never publicly disclosed. Some analysts believed she had assumed a new identity under protective arrangements facilitated by offshore networks. Others suggested she remained under discreet observation by parties with interests in preventing further exposure. The DNA test at the Royal Hospital had triggered more than a family crisis. It revealed vulnerabilities at the intersection of trust, wealth, and global competition. What began as a routine medical precaution exposed hidden alliances, encrypted exchanges, and a calculated escape that unfolded within 48 hours. In the end, Khalid retained his empire but not certainty. Sofia disappeared into obscurity, leaving behind unanswered motives and a child whose origins became part of a story that crossed borders and blurred the line between personal betrayal and strategic infiltration.